Good morning and welcome to the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap, episode 102. Now, I've just told these lovely gentlemen I want to keep it short today, which means it'll probably be like an hour 5 rather than an hour 20, but
yeah,
we'll see.
Hey, you bring us in. What do you expect?
Now, last week's episode was so good that we got booted off the internet.
It's like a badge of honor, isn't it?
Yeah, well, look, it was apparently those motor web songs, music, we're close enough to the original that sorry, I got to tweak my camera here. We're close enough to the original that we got copyright struck.
Oh, really? You got copyrighted? Goodness.
We got copyrighted. Blame MotorWeb, but we got copyrighted. So those episodes. I think they're still there, but I think there's element in some places. But I think the elements of the audio have been removed.
Just on that portion, or the whole show, or can people
just
watch
portion,
everything?
But it's a pretty brutal tool. So I'm not sure. Like I think people have seen it now. We can always pop it through. I'll see whatever. Look at it, how bad it is. But yeah, we got taken down. So yes, the episode's so good it got removed from the internet. Yeah.
Well, you know,
you've hit the mark. To be honest, you can't go to your friends and say, "I got kicked off the internet because I said something really controversial," and it actually was just copyrighted music. Never mind.
We're not running for governor of North Carolina, so I mean, too soon. Speaking of that, that's a pretty short haircut you've got there, David.
Well, it was fractionally shorter last week.
I think it's the lighting. I think you're a bit better lit this week, and it's very much showing. So yes, yeah. Excellent. So how are things out there in Dealerland, Graham? I think last week you complained that you got while they were online, there was some vehicle sales going on behind you. Anything will happen now? Do you think nothing will have sold all week, and suddenly the guys will do 3 really easy transactions while you're sitting tied to your desk?
Yeah, probably that's the way it works in this land. No, it's sort of miserable and raining up here today in sunny Auckland, so I suspect everyone's and it's got cold again. It's just so I don't know about this morning. There's service customers coming and going, but because we're in a service department as well. But the retail arm, I think today is one of those stay-at-home days. Never mind.
Yep. It's definitely a bit chilly out there in every sense of the word. So, yeah.
Yeah, we keep talking about waiting for the good news stories to pop up, and we're sort of like the eternal gardeners of the watering can hovering over our easy grow. We're sort of looking for those little seeds here and there, and we see little pockets, and then the seed dies back down again, and we see a little pocket. I just don't know. I've given up predicting when we're going to see some sort of rise in activity that we can really say, look, here we go, we're on our way up again. And we've talked about it many, many times. I still think it's an end of the year gig before people really feel as if there's some change they can take to the bank and start buying with any degree of confidence. Conversely, though, and we've again talked about this, and David, I can see you nodding your head, the old phrase that dealers use, but it's probably never been truer, it has never been a better time to buy a new car right now. Good Lord, there's some crazy deals out there. But just no one's really paying attention.
Well, hopefully that might be about to turn around, and I do say hopefully, and we've always noted, well, not always, we've consistently noted this year, it's hang on until 2025, and I think it's still looking a bit like that. But there was a glimmer of good news this week with the 1.1 billion profit by Fonterra, and so a record payout to the farmers, and that will begin to trickle through. And I'm waiting with interest to see what the Reserve Bank does in October. The US dropped 0.5. I don't think the Reserve Bank here will do that in October. I think they'll do a 0.25 drop and then another 0.25 in December. You combine a record payout from Fonterra to farmers and progressive reduction in the OCR, and therefore progressive reduction in mortgage rates, people start to feel more hopeful. So I'm predicting if we get those 0.5 by December, it will be a summer of hope.
Well,
I know here sort of
let's
we're not
keep
here to
hoping.
talk about the same issue time and time again, but you mentioned the record pay to farmers. How much difference does it actually make in the showrooms versus it's just a nice sentiment to have? So OCR rate cuts, for example, mortgage rate drops, that's a tangible thing. People can actually look at their bank statement and say, well, okay, if I'm on floating, for example, next month's going to be better than this month. I've got a farm, so I can speak for this. That my tenant is a dairy farmer, and he's got several properties. He's heavily involved in the dairy industry and the Manukau, and he's not going to race out and buy himself a new Navara or a Hilux anytime soon, just because the payout's gone up. Farmers are a lot more canny, I think, these days. The old idea about, the dairy payout's gone up by 25 cents. Woohoo, let's go and buy a new Kingswood. It's long gone. These are very savvy business people that have learned a long time ago to put the hay in the shed in the rainy days, so to speak. And the money's going to get spent in areas like fertilizer and maybe some extra equipment or upgrading equipment that they need to rather than they want to. But it's been a pretty lean couple of seasons. I don't see the Hilux roses breaking anytime soon any more than they are right now.
No, I'm going to take a different view because I've extensive background in horticulture and agriculture in New Zealand over a long period of time with family and etc. The first priority in a good payout is to run down a little bit of debt. The second priority, I think you're right, is fertilizer and also replacing equipment. So we might see, farm bikes and quad bikes and side-by-sides replaced. They do also have a look at when is the best time to replace their vehicles. And if there are some good deals and they've got a good payout, they might swap some of those around. So it's not an open and shut case, but it's not an overnight change either. What I was implied when I talked about the big payout was that it's the start of the positive news coming through. It's perhaps we're hitting the bottom of the curve and it's starting to slowly turn upwards. So that's you've got to have I think we need it as an economy. We need a number of indicators to line up. Farmers payout is only one of them. OCR rate cuts is the other. Business confidence needs to be signaled as well before consumers start to feel confident as well.
Now, I would have to say, Graham, of course, you are the last person in the world your tenant will tell if he's doing well and making bank off the land there.
Oh, he's on a fixed rate, and we've just renegotiated for another couple of years or so. So I can't see that being an issue. And given that we have a co-share with fertilisation and bits and pieces and pasture quality, I've got a pretty good vested interest in how well he's doing because I want to make sure that he's actually there to pay the rent next month. I'm fourth generation rural on the land, so we talk about the sort of the farming sector and a bit of a chuckle because it's just far more complex, I think, than a lot of people in New Zealand give credit for, and it kind of riles me a wee bit every time I say, it's the dairy payout.
You're so rural, Graham. You're so rural. With your Mustang and your Volkswagen Tiguan and your house in the suburbs, and
I got a pair of red bands. Have you?
So does every car dealer that goes to field days on a semi-regular basis.
Goes to field days, buys a pair of bloody red bands, and you can tell because they're always like brand. It's like parliamentary. They go and buy the politicians brand new gumboots for field days every single year, and they stand out like sore thumbs. It's like, can you at least got them a little bit muddy?
Yep, I don't have red bands. I got a pair of they're a reasonable brand, but black gumboots, slightly taller and narrow, just fits better with the aesthetic. If you go watch my BYD Shark video from Field Days, you'll see me in my gumboots. And a couple of people in the comments.
You've been to my farm.
A vehicle tester in gumboots. That's something we want to see more of. But yeah, they get worn once a year for field days, and then they get put back in the corner of the garage, and then I go back around a year later and I shake them out to make sure there's no white tails in there, and chuck them back on when I get out of the car when I get there. But yeah,
you've seen my farm. You actually need gumboots there right now, big ones, deep ones. Any rate,
right.
Sorry.
Anyway, let's kick on with the news. I'm going to. Where are we? I guess first, in the absence of Mr. Amos Banbury, we should mention the Bikes for Good promotion that's on. It is for the I Am Hope Foundation on Mental Health. Amos Banbury, our friendly occasional co-host, is one of the partners of this competition. There's a nice little Harley Davidson Street Bob there that you could win. I believe last time they gave away a Ducati. So I don't think the tickets are that expensive. You can win a motorcycle. David, would you like one of those in your garage?
No.
Well, I'm telling it how it was.
You don't like oil leaks?
They don't leak oil these days. The main reason I say no is that for most of the Harleys, their suspension travel is very limited, and it's quite a rough ride once you get up over 80k. So every little bump on the motorway, you tend to feel it. So it's not. That's just purely a personal decision. It's not a downer on Harley. A lot of people like them, but no, Harleys are not my cup of tea. A Ducati, on the other hand, would have been nice.
Yes.
Hey, all the Comancheros in Christchurch can't be wrong. I mean, good enough for them.
Have they,
just
did they get theirs
because
taken off
everybody-
and put in the shredder?
Yeah.
Yes.
Probably a good market for Harleys and Christchurch. Then. Right. That's there. Anyway, go buy a ticket for that. So, a bit of a sad story this week. Key Christchurch Supplier Centre heavily damaged in fire. Auto Inspection Services, a stalwart of the Christchurch import trade for the last 24 years, was hit this morning by a fire that has damaged vehicles and put its compliance workshop out of business for the foreseeable future. The fire made headlines with smoke from the Sydenham site billowing across the central city and triggering air quality alerts. 9 fire appliances attended the scene. Managing Director Nick Owens, who has served the trade for several years as Via's South Island chairman, says he's not yet had the chance to, this was yesterday, to properly assess the building. It is significant damage. We likely won't be operating from this site again. Owens says, explained that around 30% of the roof is gone. He says fire was caused by a lithium-ion battery, not from a car, in rubbish at the transfer station his business shares a wall with. While it started at the transfer station, he believes his business has been named due to its prominent signage. No one was injured in the fire. Owens says around 6 vehicles have been directly burned, according to emergency services, including his own motorhome. Around 40 vehicles are on site at the other end of the building, and while he suspects there may be smoke and contamination, he is not yet certain. On the flip side, that number is a lot down on what they would normally have in there due to the slow market.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe this will be the end of the business, but he will need to see what warehouse space and equipment is available once they've gotten through the process there. Put
we were talking about it yesterday about what would happen if. And it's a real tragedy. First of all, because Nick is just such a good operator. And if you ask anybody at all in Christchurch that agree with that, he's a stellar operator in that particular field. He's been a stalwart of the trade in terms of his involvement with the old IMVIA and VIA, and just building that business up to where it is right now. And it's a real tragedy for him. But here's the real issue is, how do you restart a business like that? So fire is kind of the worst of it, because you've lost everything. Let's assume you lost everything. But you can't just, because your business is complying cars, you can't just set up shop tomorrow in another site. It's first of all the issue with insurance and the issue of premises. Finding commercial premises right now is not an easy task anywhere in New Zealand that suits an operation that involves vehicles. You go and ask your landlord about putting a workshop in, and a lot will just turn you down blank. They don't want to have car businesses of any sort on their premises. You've got everything ranging from the hoists, the power, having the right 3-phase power connections, the office space, then the physical issue of your staff. What do you do with your staff during that layover period? What do you do around so working with NZTA to have the authority to operate at that particular site? There's all these different little overlays. You just can't restart that overnight. And it is, talking to Nick about it just quickly yesterday, I mean, the word he used to describe it started with F and ended in UCT, and you can work out the rest. It's going to be a real challenge, and I really feel for him. But starting it again, boy, that's a toughie.
So, question: the cars that are in there, not owned by him, are they covered by insurance? Who gets the insurance?
They'll be covered by his business insurance. He'd have cover for that.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think
they'll be-
and I think as far as the what's good and what's not, it's not really a question for him or even his customer. It's going to be a question for the insurance company. The vehicles at the other end, no matter what smoke they've got, there's probably going to be some impact, and whether it's easy for the car companies just to for the insurance company to write them off or to spend some time cleaning or decontaminating them, tricky to say. Building like that, there's going to be some iffy stuff in the smoke. So, yeah, I'm sure there'll be some smarter people than us working out what the status is of those vehicles.
It's an old NZR building, I think, an old NZR cargo shed or cargo maintenance shed, I think, was its origins back from the 30s. So you can imagine what's in the roofing material and structuring bits and pieces as well.
Yeah. The key thing is no one was hurt, and I'm sure the industry will do their best to do what they can for Nick over that. And it's a weird thing to say, but it is one of the benefits of it being a slightly quiet time in the market, and that there weren't many more vehicles in there. If that had been densely packed with vehicles at the time, what would have happened? And that hopefully it won't delay too many other businesses and have too many other ongoing repercussions from that perspective. Now, totally aside, and I'm only bringing this up, doing this because Nick, because it's quite a light part of the story, but Nick took the time to send it to me without asking yesterday. Nick, like myself, drives a Chinese-made electric vehicle, a BYD Atto 3, and the Chinese are very aware of air quality. So most Chinese vehicles that come to New Zealand have quite a sophisticated PM 2.5 particulate monitor in them, and a system that can clean the air down to that level. Tesla's obviously had that for a while, but the BYDs have it, the MGs have it, and so on and so forth. So these systems will automatically detect when the air quality is low, and they'll funnel air through an additional filtration system to clean the air. Now, obviously, the fire there made news in the city because it covered the central city in smoke, and there were actually air quality warnings in the central city. So they had obviously gone to the fire in the Atto, and he sent me this picture. And if you look in the top corner, so that's a picture of how the purification system works. The outside, so it's detected that the air is dirty. The air is at the air rating. I'm not sure if that's how many particles or what the actual percentage is. But is at max 999. That air is very, very dirty. Lots of particulate, nasty. Inside the car with the system working, 6. So yes, I thought that was interesting. I thought it was obviously he found it amusing enough to send along that the system was working that well to keep their lungs clear. So if you had
You might need to clean the filters in his car soon.
Yes, I would suggest after this event that at the next service that filter is probably going to get a wee tidy up. But hey, look, it did the job. It did. So, yeah, right. Now let's move on to some more stories. Turner's eyes growth amid market challenges. Turner's Automotive Group remains in a strong position as it navigates its challenging economic environment. That's according to Chief Executive Todd Hunter, who addressed shareholders at the company's 2024 annual meeting on September 18, while describing the current motor vehicle market as bouncing along the bottom. That's one way to look at it, I guess. Hunter acknowledged that new car sales have been impacted significantly as they tend to be more discretionary. However, he highlighted the used car market as proving to be more resilient, with volumes from April to August 2024 tracking in line with last year. Maybe for them. I think the overall trend is that we see demand continue to strengthen for lower value cars as the economy has deteriorated and consumers have been impacted. They still need vehicles but are spending less because they can afford less. Hunter pointed to a significant reduction in the number of registered dealers over the past 5 years, correlating with fewer used imports coming into the country. Our expectation is that these dealer numbers will continue to drop, and ultimately this is a business where scale will win. Turner's had a strong year with 3 out of 4 business divisions delivering material growth against financial year 23. Hunter anticipates a shift in profit composition for financial year 2025, particularly with higher profits from finance as interest margins start to expand again. So yeah, interesting one there. And it's something we are going to see. You know, we've seen a number of years of big businesses like Turner's and some of the bigger dealer groups do very well. And while they will, I guess, in context, continue to do well, shareholders are probably going to have to accept that results are going to change over the next over the next year. What do you think of their comments about scale winning, Graham? Do you think that that's fair? I mean, we're seeing big numbers out of Too Cheap and supposedly out of Too Cheap and out of NZ Cheap Cars, and some of the bigger networks seem to be bouncing along okay. Is it getting really hard out there for the small guy on his own?
Yeah, actually, it probably is. It depends which market you're in, obviously, but there's always going to be a level of squeezing out if your competition grows. I mean, there's a finite number of vehicles being sold. It's an inescapable truth. The pie is only so big. And if the pie size itself isn't changing, if your growth numbers are occurring, that's occurring at the expense of somebody else's slice of pie. And yes, I think there are some of the smaller players that are going to struggle a wee bit in the face of the likes of Turners. We talk about the Too Cheaps and things like that, it's all about market share. And yeah, I think economy of scale definitely plays favourites sometimes when it comes, particularly a market like now, where you can amortize your cost across such a vast range of services. You haven't got all your eggs in the one basket, 1 or 2 yards. But that also comes at the expense when things do get tough, is it's a lot easier for that machine to go backwards very, very fast at a significant rate of knots if you're not careful. And so one advantage that Turners do have is they're a really well-run business. And you've got people at the top that appear to have their eye on the ball at every single opportunity to make sure that whatever happens, there's something else popping along in the background that they can some other lever they can pull effectively to maintain the business momentum. And not every business has that ability, has that advantage. So, well done to Turners, not only for what they're achieving in the market space, but I said just from the people behind it, it's a well-run machine.
I think the way they've restructured their property into look, I don't know the cost of lease, but lower cost, porta cabin and wire shed, wire fence kind of operations back from their big giant buildings they had in the past too, in this kind of situation certainly helps as well, because we've seen this recently with the warehouse results. You can be recovering in markets doing well, okay on margin, but if the market's down, you're selling less widgets to pay for those big fixed costs like your roof, like your head office, all that kind of thing, then keeping it tight's the key thing.
I was going to say, scale only works if you can reduce your margins per unit sold to help with the turnover. And Graham's right. Once you reduce your margin, you can go backwards very quickly if you're not responsive. So the key here, as you note, Richard, is how well is the business run? How are they monitoring what's happening? How responsive and how flexible are they to changing market conditions to play around with those margins and those costs? So yeah, Turners to me appears to be, and they've been for some time, a very well run company, and I think they've been the star in the downturn in terms of the used car market. They really have managed to maintain a degree of momentum that belies the market conditions.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of scale, Winger Group, they've opened a 6th Subaru dealership in West Auckland. Winger Motors West Auckland officially opened its new Subaru dealership at 156 Central Park Drive, Henson, on September 14. Did you go along and get a balloon and a cupcake or something, Graham?
No, but I can throw my coffee cup that way right now and hit them. So, in terms of actual frontage itself, I have to say there's not much in the way of a change of frontage. It's just putting another emblem out the front.
The 6th authorised Subaru Centre for the Winger Group offers sales and service from the new dealership premises. After more than 30 years representing Subaru, Winger Motors are thrilled to open our new dealership in Henderson, servicing a growth year and continuing our partnership with the brand for yet more years to come. Winger Group owner Wayne Leach says. Interscape New Zealand Limited General Manager Kim Mello says having a Subaru offering for customers in the fast-growing West Auckland region is pleasing. Winger Motors have represented Subaru since the 1990s, making it one of our longest-standing dealer networks. We're excited to further support our customers by opening Winger Motors West Auckland, enabling access to our Subaru vehicles that can get them to where they need to be with confidence and control.
Boy, that wasn't on the press release, was it, Richard?
Was there a Subaru dealership out there already? Because surely West Auckland had a Subaru dealership. I mean, all those bush bashing hippies and guys blasting around in their
it's
turbocharged legacy wagons. It's kind of in the culture.
Yeah, it surprises me. Westy and Subaru must hand in hand, a marriage in heaven.
No, because they will buy all used old bungers to go out and surf on the beach. No one's in the Champagne Socialists aren't going to go and take their nice new shiny Outback out to the beach, are they? But there actually hasn't been. And one of the few brands that were substantial brands we haven't had in West Auckland for quite some time has actually been Subaru. There's been a Subaru servicing business out here forever, but certainly not a retail store. And for a while there, the idea was everyone gravitated away from having stores in the likes of West Auckland, and it was centralising it down into literally, the Great North Road or the Great South Road precincts in central Auckland area. But that hasn't necessarily been successful, and we've seen that gradual response to bring marks back to the satellite areas like West Auckland, the growth of the West Gates and the Northwest and things like that. That's happening down south as well, the same sort of process where that sort of one store site that services the entire Auckland region doesn't necessarily work. People don't want to have to go into the city to go and talk about a new car or even for that matter get their vehicle serviced. So it's good to see them out here. And it's probably a tick in the right direction for West Auckland. That's getting certainly a growth area right now in new car franchises. Welcome on board. Welcome in.
Yeah, exactly. Lost my window. Where am I? There we are.
But like Toria Whanau in her car, isn't it, really? Where's my dude? Where's my window? Boy, is that ever the gift that keeps on giving?
Now, I remember us talking about the flip side of this story a little while back and saying, good on you guys, doing well out there. Western Coast MG retrenches back to Taranaki. Western Coast MG has retrenched its operations back to Taranaki, abandoning plans to open a full dealership in Whanganui on a former Pizza Hut restaurant site on Victoria Avenue. A pop-up MG sales location, which operated in the former restaurant's car park, was closed in August. Western MG dealer principal Jimmy Gilson told the Whanganui Chronicle that a 50% drop in new vehicle sales had forced the retrenchment. The business will continue to operate its MG dealerships in New Plymouth and Hara. However, he did not rule out a future return to the Whanganui site. We still own the building, but a bit of engineering and sorting out of the power was as far as it got. Never say never, though. So, yeah, sad to see that a growing young business like that's had to bail out on a city, on what is a fairly significant city for a brand that certainly should be in a city of that size, I guess.
Wanganui is a strange market in that it really feels when the economy is tough and you want to then see how people are doing, just look at Wanganui because it tends to reflect the economic conditions of the day.
Yeah. What's the justification for that?
It's besides, it really does rely on the surrounding farming community to sort of drive business hubdom. There's not a lot of business outlets there other than that which is to support farming and agriculture. And it has also a high number of people who are on benefits because the cost of living has been low and they can afford to sort of live there as opposed to other places because rental costs are lower, etc. So it tends to indicate that lower to middle socioeconomic part of society, and they're the ones that tend to feel it when the economy gets tough.
Yes. So it's a weird one, Morgan. It's a bigger city than I thought. I've popped through there a few times, and I duck into the central city. And it seems quite small, but you get there, and it's actually quite a substantial place. And there's some big industry there. Obviously, Suzuki New Zealand's headquartered in engineering, a lot of rural base.
Yeah. My father-in-law lives there, and I owned rental properties there for about 15 years. So I'm pretty familiar with Wanganui as a city and Taranaki as a region. So when you own rentals there, you couldn't charge that much because of the type of market it is. So you were there for other reasons.
Yeah. Right.
I was going to say, as a sidebar to that story, Richard, what we don't know right now is how many of these undone deals have been going on around the regions in the last 6 months or so that we don't hear about. It's almost unusual for a business to have it well publicized enough that they actually have to stand back and say, look, you know what, we're going to do it. We're not going to do it anymore because of the economy, which is eventually what it is. How many more expansion plans or growth plans or reciting plans have been just quietly shelved that we have no idea about?
Or simply retrenchments. I mean, the Ebbets Group's pulling some of their brands out of Taupo. Taupo's now kind of not big enough to sustain some of the smaller brands. It's just, the way things are moving. People will be expected to travel for their vehicles more. So, yeah. Now, another nice story for the day. Milner Mobility partners with the Hellberg Foundation. Of course, the Milner name is just synonymous with pretty much every side of the trade. They've sold new cars, they've sold used cars, and now they sell disability vehicles. Milner Mobility, a leading provider of mobility vehicles in New Zealand, is partnering with the Hellberg Foundation, which will see it become a partner of the annual Hellberg Games. This collaboration marks a meaningful step forward towards helping young people with physical disabilities and ensuring they have equal opportunities to participate in sport and recreation. Milner Motors is a family-owned business, of course, owned by Rod and his son Darren. General Manager Darren Milner expressed his enthusiasm for the partnership, stating, "We are delighted to be joining this partnership and feel privileged to support the Hellberg Foundation and all they represent." Great thing. If you ever have a chance to pop into Milner Mobility's headquarters down there in Mount Wellington, drop Darren or Ewan Philpott there a call or an email and ask to go have a look. It is an amazing facility. They have some amazing vehicles there. They're now partnering with some serious New Zealand new vehicle brands around some of these things they're bringing in, and they have a spectacular series of workshops where they are adapting and building mobility vehicles right here in New Zealand. And you know, people have probably heard spoken to Rod in the past. I remember years ago him talking about having this dream of this big place where they could do all this and people would come and pick out their vehicles and look at all this stuff to help. Came from a passion of his, where his first wife was wheelchair bound, and probably a number of years ago people thought, that's a nice dream, Rod. It sounds pretty big, and whether it'll happen in New Zealand, it might be a bit of a stretch. He has done exactly that. It's pretty much his dream that he laid out years ago. I think he's still missing the full-on cafe, but they still do a decent cup of coffee there. So,
and it's not been
place.
easy. And it's not been an easy transition for them to be able to do that. I'm aware from my previous job and over the years, the number of times that various brands and outlets like that approached me for guidance on how to get NZTA approval for modifications to the vehicles, because that is pretty stringent criteria. So the moment you start hacking, backs of vehicles around to put in platforms and things like that, it's got to be done properly. And this is a site that I think has got an exemplary record in being able to work with the agency and get it done right and do it with confidence, so that people know that the safety of the vehicle has been maintained while it's been turned into a really practical and helpful vehicle for mobility purposes. So I've been impressed with the work that they've been doing over the years.
One of the cool things they've done, and I think a big nod needs to go to Ewan Philpott here for his work around this, is that obviously there are some incredibly good factory-backed disability conversion vehicles being built in places like Europe or the UK, particularly for our sourcing, and they have worked with brands, and I think Ford's one of the ones, where they are moving towards getting New Zealand factory backing for these cars. That the vehicles are essentially parallel imported, and that's such a good location to see the parallel used side. Well, not they're technically new vehicles, but the parallel import side of the market working hand in hand with the new vehicle distributors here for good. I think it's so impressive, and I know they've got more work going forward with other brands that will be visible in the future. So.
And it's the same sort of parallel between motorhomes. So a lot of motorhomes will run on a Fiat Ducato or a Ford chassis, and they built overseas, imported straight from factory conversions that are parallel imported. So, there's a good case for that. So where there is a specialised need that is not for the general public eye, there's another sort of purpose for it, motorhomes or mobility. Parallel import is the way to go if you can make it work.
If you want to see something funny in regards to vehicles, Google, I can't remember the exact term, but basically there's images online of how some of those Fiat Ducatos are delivered to the motorhome factories, because a lot of them are done entirely without a rear chassis. They are literally just a cab with a kind of stub chassis. And I've seen them done where they put two of them and they belt them together in the middle, so you've basically got a double-ender Fiat Ducato cab, two cabs back to back, driving either direction. Or the other one, which I think would be hilarious to drive, is they essentially have them on a set of casters. So the front end can drive, it's just a couple of casters bolted to the back of that stub chassis to hold the back up. They just look hilarious, but very clever, very, very clever.
Whack a D plate on the back and away you go.
Oh, exactly. Imagine cruising down the Auckland motorway in a double-ended Fiat Ducato and freaking people out.
Well, it would freak the police out mostly, wouldn't it, Richard?
Wouldn't know about that at all, would we, lads?
What can you get away with on a dealer plate? Come on.
Yeah.
What we used to get away with on a dealer plate's probably more to the point, Richard. I think these
Graham and I
days it's a
probably
little bit
pushed the
more.
limits of a dealer plate a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we might have. Yeah. We can't talk about that, but we certainly look at that fondly at the old days when we. Oh, good Lord. Yeah. Perhaps it's best we don't reflect on those days too much, let's just say.
Yes. I still see a lot of people doing some dodgy stuff, moving particularly trucks out of the port and out of holding yards at the moment, like literally jumping on the motorway with no number plate at all. Just, I'm not saying where. Some New Zealand police listening, I'm not saying where. Just, yeah. Anyway. But what, back in the old days, Graham, if you had like 10 vehicles in a row, only the back car needed a dealer plate, is that right?
Allegedly, I've heard could have happened, but allegedly also I heard that if you made a tight enough convoy in the Northwestern Motorway and you glued a little label to the front of the screen that looked a bit like a Warren Fitness label, apparently, allegedly, I don't know, and a little vanity plate at the front, then as long as the back car had a plate on it, all was good with the world, so I hear. I, of course, was not part of any of those sort of things at all, but, just stories I've heard.
Right.
Next story, please.
DPL Insurance gets credit rating upgrade. DPL Insurance, which includes motor vehicle brand AutoSure, has received another credit rating boost from ratings agency AM Best. It's the company's fourth upgrade since 2013, with the ratings agency upgrading DPL's issuer credit rating from BBB to BBB Plus, and has affirmed the insurance financial strength rating of B++. It's great to have the strength of our business acknowledged by our rating agency, particularly our AutoSure division. He adds that it's pleasing to receive the positive upgrade at a time when the insurance ratings are generally under pressure from rising costs, given the current economic environment. Why does this matter to you? You want to make sure that those warranties you're selling are there when you need them in 2 years' time. Is probably the point.
Oh, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yep.
The next story we can probably flick through, because it was Fonterra reporting a $1.1 billion full year profit. Fonterra has announced a profit after tax of $1.1 billion for its full year results, with earnings delivered at the top end of the forecast range. As a truck man, Graham, can I just say, Fonterra do a great job of having their trucks and trailer units looking really good, don't they?
The requirements around the drivers, it's insane. And it's a really long list to get yourself a job with Fonterra to be some call them tanker wankers, but the general term is a milk delivery specialist. It's a long waiting list, and the requirements around presentation and driving and then the presentation from the plant. It's when you think about it, it's the same reason the most successful of the chilled goods delivery companies in New Zealand all run trucks that are usually kept really clean, through the truck wash all the time. A favoured colour is things like whites and silvers, because you want to give the impression of cleanliness, of a clean, pure product. And of course, for Fonterra, nothing could be worse than going to buy a bottle of milk from the dairy and seeing a Fonterra truck going past covered in slime and grease, and a guy in a sort of a bit of a yellow hivers picking his nose as he goes past with a cigarette out the window. Images everything in the foodstuffs industry. And right from the gate, as they say, Fonterra have always maintained a really high profile. And I'm talking about a kid that used to go out and see the trucks on the tanker track back in the early 70s when we used to still milk cows. Even then, the presentation standards were pretty damn high, considering they ran a bunch of old leaky Bedford TKs and plastic cabbed Atkinsons. They did very well indeed.
Interestingly, they're smart with their money. I was reading a thing recently. You could go and read it, I believe, on transporttalk.co.nz. Great website that. Where Fonterra now have a program where they've let the contract out to someone who's running it, where the tankers they do a certain amount of life as a tanker, and then where I think that they are at their peak criticalness. They have to be at their peak condition and modern for various reasons, whatever. Once they've done a certain number of miles with that, they now get taken out of service at that, and they get the tanker equipment removed, and a chiller body or a box body put on, and they go into service, delivering milk to the stores, into their retail fleet, that kind of stuff. It was interesting to see that. I would have thought they would have had one truck for one truck for the other, but I think they've realised they can have a second life in that second role rather than having new trucks in that second role. So.
It's actually there's a big business in repurposing them, and there are a couple of companies that do that, converting them from the 8-wheeler trucks down to tracked units and things, because there's so many of them. That's part of the problem with a fleet that size. And New Zealand doesn't necessarily have a purpose around every corner for an 8-wheeler rigid truck without a fifth wheel. So there are a lot of different strategies around trying to find a market for them that doesn't just involve dumping them off at Turner's Trucks or Mannheim auctions to be flicked off for the lowest common price. So yeah, and it's, as a fleet manager, these things are really important because your residual cost is such a large part of what you're looking at.
Yes, no, exactly. Now, let's flick through the last few stories. We might make it under an hour today. US Automotive Hall of Fame inducts Bill Ford. Ford Motor Company Executive Chair William Clay Ford Jr. was among 2024 inductees to the Automotive Hall of Fame on September 19. The ceremony was held at the restored Michigan Central Railway Station in Detroit, a project led by the Ford Motor Company Executive Chair. According to the Hall of Fame, Bill Ford has played a pivotal role in advancing industry and positioning a global 120-year family company for the future. It was interesting in recent weeks. He came out, and I think he was probably one of the most honest execs in the American industry when he took a trip to China, looked at some of their cars, and came back and said, "We need to be shit scared right now and get our shit stuff in order." I think it was a very brave thing of him to say out publicly, just to finally acknowledge to the American people that, hang on a second, these guys are getting really, really, really good.
Well, it's one thing to say it. It was one thing to think it, and I suspect they've all been thinking this for quite some time. But it's another thing to actually come out and say it. It really is.
My tentacles into the USA Society through my motorcycling friends, and a considerable number of them, and I have to say, there is still a general hate and mistrust by consumers in the USA of anything China. So the Chinese brands tend to have a challenge in the USA as a market. But I think what this guy was saying is, well, we need to get our house in order because China's selling cars in all the other markets that we sell cars into. And they've got some pretty good stuff there, and their consumers are not so put off from the Chinese brand. So yeah, it's I think GM could do well to also follow suit.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's just a repeat pattern. You think back to the 70s where you couldn't park a Japanese car in a UAW parking lot where they assembled, new GMCs or new Chevrolets. There was that real, and the fires are being stoked by the manufacturers. You could almost hear in the meeting hall saying, "Don't forget when you get down to the shop to buy the pint of milk, tell them about that, stupid foreign crappy Japanese car. Don't buy one of those." And I think a lot of that's still occurring within American society, where the fires are being stoked to be, sort of the anti-Chinese sentiment, the anti-Chinese car sentiment. But consumers are funny things. And in our age of global information, how many are actually listening to that sentiment? But then they're trundling off to the showrooms, and we've seen it happen with the invasion of the Japanese vehicles. Well, the earliest example of that was Volkswagen, with the Volkswagen Beetle, post-war Germany. And what was one of the biggest markets for the Volkswagen Beetle in the world? America. And so people don't always listen to what they're being told by their masters, they see, so to speak, and they'll quietly trundle off to the showroom if the product's available, which is obviously the key question here, and vote with their checkbooks instead.
Yeah, although I have to say, there is less reticence in the USA for markets, Japanese-built vehicles, European-built vehicles compared to China. It's been a long history of American distrust of China. So it's not just in vehicles, horticultural products and agricultural products, a whole wide range of things. And to be fair, the Chinese product, particularly their metal and their steel, was a very patchy quality for quite some time. And I think it's going to take a little while for the USA consumers to become more trusting of the products coming out of China. But again, the point here is it's not so much the USA market they're worried about, it's the rest of the world they're worried about. And they should be. Absolutely should be.
Key American automotive media has gotten their hands on a few modern Chinese vehicles recently. There's a few BYD seals out of, I think, Canada, though Canada's banned, has blocked them as well on tariff basis. And some Neos got taken in there by Neo, who are obviously trying to lay the groundwork for what they might do in the future. And then TFL got hold of a BYD Shark and put it up against a Rivian and a Cybertruck in a video last week. And they're all putting out to that American public how impressive these vehicles are and that the quality is finally there. And the thing they pointed out with the Shark is even though Shark's actually quite overpriced for its market, where it is in Mexico is very high, is a very expensive car market for what they are, and they were working off the Mexican conversion price, that it was still half the price of the Rivian or less than half the price of the Cybertruck. And they just thought it was just absolutely nutty value, and they were saying they thought the Chinese with their plug-in hybrid technology were on the right track for what the American market really needs.
I'm certain that the Chinese brands will do better in the USA in coming years because I think the USA consumers are starting to get a bit wary of overpriced vehicles.
Yeah. Now,
well, it's worse than that. Was it Deloitte with the vehicle reliability survey or one of the organisations like that came out last week, I think it was, for 2024, and Tesla sits about halfway down the list in terms of overall product reliability. I think second from the bottom was Rivian. And so as much as the Americans wish to support the brands that are homegrown, it's like you sort of look back and say, well, you realize that you're doing anything to help yourselves in terms of your own build quality and some of the issues you're facing around reliability. If you really expect American consumers to stand behind you, just build them a bit better, would you? Otherwise, the race... It's a race to nowhere, and the Chinese product will follow the Japanese product and the Korean product in getting on top of quality control issues as an absolute paramount must, because that's what ultimately delivers sales through consumer satisfaction with the products they purchased.
Interesting, of course, both Canada and the North and America have proposed or have already put in place 100% minimum tariffs on Chinese-built vehicles, but they're trying to be protective of their market there. I always said that was one Mexican factory away from being defeated, and it seems that is happening. I've heard through some sources in the logistics industry, even though BYD hasn't confirmed exactly where they're going to build a plant in North America, that they are moving so much material and production equipment into Mexico at the moment that it's actually impacting shipping schedules and how much capacity they have to move stuff around. I think it's because of the volume. I think it's because a lot of ships that would be going into LA are actually going down there first or spending more time there or whatever the situation is. And don't ask me, I'm not some logistics scientist, but apparently it's a notable blip on the shipping landscape. So, yeah, they ain't messing around.
Gosh, what could be happening there?
Yes. Right. I've lost my window again. It's terrible, isn't it? Very professional.
48 minutes, Richard. 48 minutes. Come on.
Colonial remains strong amid economic crunch. Colonial Motor Company says it remains in a strong and stable financial position despite operating in a recessionary environment. The company has published its 2024 annual report. We have actually discussed these results earlier in the year when they were released. This is the annual report, which follows the release of its financial year results for the year ending June 30. The trading profit after tax was down 41% to $14.88 million, while revenue rose $1.6 million to $1. And I was going to say that's 1.01 billion. I was going to say, is that like 1 cent at the end? But it's not. That dot .1 would be $1,000 basically, I think. Chief Executive Alex Given says the current economic environment was inevitable after record government spending during COVID-19. The company is well positioned to capitalise on that period, and our dealerships, whether car, truck or tractor, made hay while the sun shone. The economy was fueled by deficit spending, and with it, the automotive industry boomed. Gibbons says the crunch has finally arrived, and the market now is in stark contrast to the previous 3 financial years. They are doing some facility upgrades. They've picked up Jack Motors, and obviously they've got a bit of discussion there around the clean car standard. I guess in the case of Colonial, pull ripcord, sell Ranger.
Oh, look at the brands they've got, Richard. Let's just count them off. Agriculture, we talked about at the start of the show. Fonterra record payout, agricultural sector on the up. What are farmers going to spend money on? Okay, so we've got Ford, we've got Ranger. Okay, that's a win. They do Kenworth and DAF trucks. So you've got the transport sector, particularly the heavy stuff, so stock trucks, rural cartage, bulk, all that sort of stuff. I think every second stock truck in the South Island is a Kenworth. Then Case, you've got Case International, New Holland, so all the agricultural equipment there. So if the urban sector collapsed overnight, Colonial are sitting there holding a lot of really good cards in the remaining deck, I would say.
Vested interest here, and I'm trying to sell Colonial shares at the moment, and the lowest they've been for 2 years. So I'm just sitting there waiting for them to come back up.
So if anyone wants some Colonial shares, feel free to email David Crawford at.
David's your contact for a new Kenworth, boys.
All right, Heartland Group appoints Dixon as new chief executive. Heartland Group Holdings will appoint Group Chief Executive Officer Andrew Dixon as its new chief executive, subject to Reserve Bank of New Zealand approval from October 1, 2024. In April 24, Jeff Greenslade indicated the board has intention to step down as chief executive of Heartland by the end of this calendar year. Dixon's appointment enables a thorough handover to be completed sooner, allowing Greenslade an earlier retirement from his role and directorships on September 30, 2024. He will be appointed a non-independent, non-executive director of Heartland Bank on October 1st, 2024. Dixon joins a group leadership team that includes Heartland Bank Chief Executive Leanne Lazarus and Heartland Australia Limited Chief Executive Michelle Windsor. He's been with Heartland since 2010. So, yeah, great to see someone come from within and continue to work in what is one of our kind of key leading industry financiers. There's a good chance they have a hand in your floor plan or your vehicle finance or whatever. They've been around a while. And last off the rank today is VIA. VIA has welcomed a Ministry of Transport performance review. The Performance Improvement Review of the Ministry of Transport, released by the Public Service Commission, has provided insights into its performance and future priorities. A joint statement from organisations around the transport sector, including the Imported Motor Vehicle Industry Association, has been issued. The statement underscores the need for a proactive, collaborative and resourced ministry to lead the transport sector through the significant changes ahead. VIA's Chief Executive Greg Epps has acknowledged the Minister of Transport's positive engagement and reiterated VIA's commitment to working closely with the Ministry on a range of critical transport issues. The review highlights key areas of interest for the transport industry. I'll let you people go and read this themselves. Quite an extensive document that's attached to that. But yes, good to see that that they're reviewing all these things. Though, and David, you may have a take on this. Will they actually do any real freaking consultation at the end of it? Because what is with the new government doing such short consultation periods? I mean, the clean car standard stuff was minuscule, and what was it? 2 days or whatever they allowed for?
Yeah, that was because they'd already made up their mind largely about what outcome they wanted based on the election. So governments tend to
the oil industry stuff, the lift of the ban, and they've attached to a whole pile of stuff around who needs to clean up after oil exploration. It's like 5 days from woe to go, as far as here, give us your opinions, and then no, we don't want your opinions anymore.
Well, just coming back to that transport review, I'll note these are not new. There was one when I was with the ministry for 4.5 years because we had a review at that stage. And back then, the outcome of the review was of importance to the senior executive team and the minister because it tended to say what are the outcomes that you can improve on. And when I read your story and I went back and sort of checked on a few things, there's some common themes that have come through in the last 3 reviews, including the one that when I was there. which is the role of leadership within the ministry and how it interacts with industry and with consumers. The ministry has in the last decade at times been very hard to figure out who's doing what, and they had a number of reviews. So for me, the fact that they've actually publicised it and come out and talked about the sorts of things is a positive step, and one hopes that they continue to be a little bit more open. And I think Simeon Brown does like his departments, the ministries that he's in charge of. He does like them to be a little bit more open. Having said that, he's also a minister. Once he's made his mind up, he's in a big hurry. So I guess it depends on what the policy outcome is and what policy intent. They might actually let this one run and get some more feedback over a decent period of time. But yeah.
We'll see. They certainly don't want to take feedback on anything else.
No, I know.
Yeah. Is a dealer, is there anything you want from the NZTA, Graham, other than a check?
Man, where do we start? It's a really long list, and it's probably not for the show this afternoon or this morning to go through all those particular details. But I'm going to say it's a really complex system. It's got good bones, I think, but there's always niggles for the trade, and sometimes the niggles are not justifiable either. We all like to moan about how things are not working, but I guess transparency and having access to people that make decisions or that can actually at least arbitrate decisions is one of the key things that's been lacking for quite some time. And that sort of revolving door policy that they've had within the various agencies, where you just don't know if the official you're talking to today is the one you'll be speaking to in a year or 2 or 6 months, and so the lack of knowledge that's retained within some of the people that have been there is just somewhat disturbing. And I'd like to see a return back to people that are actually passionate about what they do, remaining in those positions, and so that knowledge is actually retained rather than just being lost and having to be relearned, if you like, every cycle of a year and a half, 2 years. Is another rebuild, refit, reschedule takes place. David, you would have suffered for that from years and years and years, that the people you're dealing with today are not people you're dealing with tomorrow, and you have to have the conversation over it.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I was in the ministry, I was considered a little bit of an oddball, and I must say I found my colleagues in the department.
When you're in the ministry, you mean just the ministry?
When you're in the ministry, David? Was that when you were in the ministry?
No. Didn't you keep that the hold in the most positive way?
I'll get back to what I was saying, Richard. I don't know.
Carry on. Sorry. We're being dicks here. Yeah.
I was considered a little bit of an oddball in that I considered it important to understand the views of people who were going to be impacted by the rules and the regulations that we were making. So I had a revolving door of customers come in and used car, new vehicle. So David Vincent and Perry Kerr were regular people that we talked to, if not weekly, certainly every 2 weeks. We worked really hard with the Motor Trade Association as well, and it was really important for us so that when we went to the minister with the recommendations, we were able to say firsthand, these were the views of what these people represent are, and here's where we believe they have merit, and here's where we believe they don't. And you can't do that if you don't have regular dialogue with the sectors who you're impacting on. Then, roll forward, and later on, I then spent nearly 11 years, 10 and a half years in the Motor Industry Association. Because after I left, the then CEO of the Ministry of Transport decided that industry experts weren't important anymore. They were all policy people, therefore that you can just wheel them into any old policy subject. And he set up what he called the professional services firm model. But all professional services firms, Deloitte's, etc., they will have about 30% of their staff who are expert matter subject people, and the rest float. And the department got rid of those expert subject people. You see it with Ian McGlinchey, who was sort of moved around. I feel quite bad because for Ian, because he was there on contract when I joined the ministry, and I persuaded him to come because I needed his industry expert knowledge as a key component for the work that we're about to do. And it lost that. So when I was with the Motor Industry Association, we found it a devil's own job to figure out who was in charge of what, who knew what on what, and who didn't know what on what. And it was almost impossible at times to put faces to and names to subject areas. Until that is, struggling to remember his name now, in the clean car stuff, who was driving the policy in the clean car stuff in the last 3 years?
Sigurd.
Sorry, Sigurd, for forgetting your name. I'll give Sigurd one area of credit that he wholeheartedly deserves, which was he would contact us and we would leave messages and he would get back in touch with us. And no matter how much he disagreed with us, he would face up and we would have the discussions. And that's what's important when you're in industry, is being able to have those discussions, have that robust debate, and know that you've tried really hard. And because if you don't do that, then our job becomes impossible.
That's only of any use, David, if they're prepared to listen when you have that debate.
That is true, and there was a certain amount of preconceived ideas, but still, Graham, it's even more important when people who are not listening to front up, and so that you can at least have had a chance. Because if they are preconceived and they don't want to front up, then that's even worse, because it's I will. I always say that the strength of a relationship is not when you agree to agree. It's when you agree to disagree and you know why you agree to disagree, and you can both go away knowing that you've heard each other. And that's the gold standard for officials in terms of consultation. And I don't see much gold standard around at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, that extremely good and insightful walk into the Beltway there is a good point to end this on. Now, somehow we ended up over an hour again.
But 2 minutes.
We can't finish the show, Richard. We cannot finish the show because we're all petrol heads. How good is Liam Lawson?
Yes. Well,
yeah.
Well, let's hope he's good, because he's got 6 races to get a seat for next year. I mean, that's the reality. It sounds to me like the Red Bull Driver Academy has been stalled for like 4 years, and suddenly it's just all switched back on again, and he's got 6 races, or Isaac Hadjar or someone else will be looking forward to that seat as well. So it's
I mean, we're doing really well. The e-racing, Scott Dixon's coming towards the end of his career, but then you've got the other Scott in there starting to do well. He finished 3rd in the championship this year, and then you've got
the Giz.
The Giz doing marvelous things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, we're doing well.
Yep. We're planning above our weight.
Got Marcus Armstrong up in Indy as well. So yeah. Carry on, Kiwis out there. Right.
Yep, exactly.
That is it for us for this week. We will be back hopefully next week. The school holidays, so who knows, Graham? You and I might get tied up with something. For the Auto Talk Weekly Wrap. Thanks, guys.